Hi, in today's video, I'm building a MiG-21. I'm using photo-etched parts for the instrument panel, wiping off the excess wash, painting the model black, applying the decals, and attaching a metal Pitot tube. As usual, I start the build by preparing the parts, in this case, the cockpit and the front landing gear bay. I clean the parts using a scalpel blade. To make painting easier, I only attached one wall of the landing gear bay. At this stage, the main landing gear bay also needs to be assembled. After priming, I painted the bays in the proper color, which in this case is light gray. For the cockpit, I used a Hataka C series paint. Unfortunately, the color is incorrect, so I recommend using paint from a different manufacturer. I wanted to see the difference between the photo-etched and plastic parts, so I also prepared the kit's instrument panel. The downside of photo-etched parts is the visible print raster and the difficulty in matching the color to rest of interior. Here are all the photo-etched parts for the cockpit. For comparison, I'm applying the decals. Their downside is that they need to be carefully placed, and some details may be poorly printed. After applying the decal, I gently press it onto the part using a cotton swab. I moisten the decal with micro-sole to help it conform better to the plastic. Sometimes, this process needs to be repeated a few times. After comparing, I decided to use the photo-etched parts. To highlight the details, I used the dry brush technique. Another technique to enhance detail visibility is a wash. I prepare it using oil paints and turpentine, then apply it with a small brush. After it dries, I wipe off the excess with a cotton swab. Here is the finished cockpit, only the seat is missing. Time to build it. After applying the base color with an airbrush, I painted the rest using a brush with acrylic paints. The next step is assembling the engine nozzle. The assembly process is simple. You just need to pay attention to the markings. Remember to drill holes for the weapon pylons before this step if you plan to install them. Dry fitting showed a gap at the fuselage joint, which I fixed by attaching a thin plastic sheet. Once the glue set, I removed the excess plastic. Now I can assemble the aircraft's fuselage. Many smaller and larger parts need to be attached to the fuselage, some of which come in open or closed variants. The upper section was cleverly designed, allowing it to cover the fuselage seam along its entire length. At this stage of the build, I attached the pylons for the fuel tank and missiles. However, now I realize that it would have been better to leave this step for the very end of the build. I attached the canopy using a small amount of extra thin glue. The kit includes canopy masks, To detect any surface imperfections, I used Mr. Surfacer Primer. Since the model will be painted silver, I sanded the surface with fine grit sandpaper. Next, I applied a glossy black paint as a base coat before silver. On this prepared surface, I can now apply the silver color. Since this aircraft wasn't in natural metal finish but was painted silver, I used Gun's silver paint instead of metallizer. While painting this model, I want to take a moment to thank all of you who watch, like, and comment on my videos. Your support means a lot to this still small modeling channel and shows me that it's worth continuing what I do. On the original aircraft, the panels with radar electronics were painted green. The next step is applying the decals. I have published a video on my channel that shows in detail how I apply decals. If a decal sticks too firmly to the model and you want to reposition it, add a bit of decal solution underneath. The kit includes a lot of stencils, and applying them took quite a bit of time. In the end, I sealed everything with a clear coat. On the model coated with a satin clear coat, I applied a wash made from oil paints and turpentine. The satin finish helps me control the wash application better. However, it's important to remember that removing the wash from such a surface is much more difficult, so it needs to be wiped off before it fully dries. I apply the wash with a thin brush directly into the panel lines, trying to avoid staining larger surfaces. After a few minutes, I remove the excess wash with a cotton pad or a brush dampened with turpentine. I try to wipe off the wash in the direction of the airflow, from the front of the aircraft toward the tail. This way, the streaks created will look more realistic. Next, I started preparing the missiles and the fuel tank. I used acrylic paints to paint the details. There's not much left to finish the build, mainly the landing gear, which consists of several parts. Painting them before assembly seemed easier to me. The front wheel is highly detailed for this scale. It's time to proceed with the final assembly. I had some issues attaching the armament, but fortunately, I managed to get it right in the end. For me, this is the most stressful part of the build, removing the masks and checking if everything turned out well. Unfortunately, a slight fogging appeared on the canopy. I'll need to be more careful next time. The kit includes decals that simulate seals, and I decided to apply them. I can now attach the nose. After checking, it turned out that the model doesn't require any additional weight. One of the distinctive features of this aircraft is the long Pitot tube. I decided to replace the plastic one with a metal one from Master. The Pitot tube was the last part one attached. Thank you for joining me throughout this build. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to read them. This was the first jet I've ever built, but I enjoyed it so much that I'll definitely build another MiG with a unique paint scheme. In the meantime, I invite you to check out the photos of the finished model and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It really helps me grow this channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.